Welcome everybody. This is the 16th cognitive webinar of CogIST. Before we get started, I would like to take a moment to introduce who we are and what we do here at CogIST. I'm Ongun Kilic, and I'm currently a part of the group that organizes the cognitive webinar series of CogIST. Cognitive webinar is a series in which we invite academics that work within cognitive science and progress in an online seminar format. CogIST at Large is an organization which aims to bring together cognitive science enthusiasts, regardless of their education level or choice of discipline. Although CogIST started out as a project to bring together like-minded individuals at Istanbul, we have rapidly grown out of the city and have members across Turkey now. On the field, CogIST has been producing translations, publishing original writings, organizing reading groups, summer schools, and casual get-togethers for fellow cognizers. We aim to grow even bigger into an organization where individuals who have a genuine interest and curiosity about human mind and behavior can produce meaningful, useful, and intriguing intellectual work in a collective manner. Before I leave the stage to our guest today, I wish to give him a brief introduction. Our guest today is Dr. Thom Scott-Phillips. Thom Scott-Phillips is a cognitive scientist and philosopher based at the Institute for Logic, Cognition, Language, and Information in San Sebastian, Spain, as an Ikerbasque research associate. He's also a senior researcher in the Social Mind Center at Central European University, Hungary, and an associate member of the Center for Language Evolution at the University of Edinburgh. Dr. Scott-Phillips' research focuses on evolutionary and cognitive approaches to mind and culture, and in particular to communication and language. His first book, Speaking Our Minds, is an interdisciplinary work on the origins of human language and communication that draws on and contributes to linguistics, anthropology, psychology, philosophy, and biology. He has published many articles in prestigious academic journals such as Nature and Trends in Cognitive Sciences, and won many prestigious awards for the quality and contribution of his research. Dear Dr. Scott-Phillips, thank you for accepting our invitation to our cognitive webinar series. And now I leave the stage to you.
Thank you very much for the extremely, maybe too generous introduction. That's very kind of you. And thank you for the invitation to give this presentation. It's good timing. This paper I'm going to focus on today was published just a few weeks ago, and the key citation is down at the bottom of the screen at the moment. Although I'm certainly going to focus on that paper, it's closely related to two other papers that me and my collaborator Christoph Heinz have published this year, and again, the citations are at the bottom of the screen there. And I'm very happy to take questions on any of them, whether it's in the Q&A at the end of this talk or by email or social media or some other way of getting in contact with me afterwards. So this is indeed going to be a very interdisciplinary talk. The analysis is theoretical, philosophical, if you like, but it's very much connected to the empirical data from primatology and the cognitive science of communication in general. I want to start with the empirical phenomenon out there in the world, the real world phenomenon. And I'm going to start by playing you three videos. They're about 40 to 50 seconds each. Turn my volume up. The sound is not so important. The visuals are the key thing. And all these videos, these three videos, they're either bonobos or chimpanzees interacting with one another, typically two. One of the videos has a few more individuals in it. And in some respects, it's not much to see. It's sort of a little bit of interaction. And I don't want to say too much about what you should see. We're going to return to these videos at the other end of the talk. And hopefully we're going to see a lot more having done our theoretical analysis. But for now, I'm just going to play them. And then after these short videos, I'm going to, I think after each one, I might ask for just a little bit of feedback on what do you see? What do you think is going on here? So here's the first one. And just to orient you, we've got on the left here a mother, got a small stream in between, and then on the right an infant. And this video comes from the paper you can see cited at the bottom there. Okay, what do we see? Anyone can speak here. I realize online people are shy, but please don't be.
Yep, you can digitally raise your hand and reply. Okay, I'm gonna give it a go.
Please do.
At first, it seemed like they were playing a game. At first, and then now it seems like there was some sort of collaboration. The mother helped the infant to come down. First, it seemed like she was trying to show how to get down, and then
Good.
now she's actually went in and did it herself.
Yeah, good. Yeah. There's a stream and they're trying to, the mother wants the infant to get across the stream. I think that's pretty clear. Exactly how she's trying to, do I want to use the word communicate? Do I want to use the word persuade, encourage, inform? We'll come to that. But one way or another, she's trying to get the infant to get across the stream. We're going to see, we're going to come back to this video later and see it's actually quite rich what she's trying to do. Here's video number 2. I'm not going to ask what's going on here because, in a sense, almost nothing happens. But again, it's quite revealing of, it's quite typical kind of 40 seconds or so of great ape interaction. And the one after this, I'll actually pause again. If you have the volume up, you'll be able to hear the video. The video person is laughing at this point. There we go. And finally, the infant gets on the mother's back. We'll come back to this video again at the end. Here's the third one. And after this one, I'm definitely going to ask, what do you see? Because this one's quite it's interesting. Person to keep your eye on is person. Interesting choice of my own words there. The individual to keep your eye on is this male on the left-hand side. Okay. Does anybody want to turn off their mics and tell me anything about what they think might be happening here? Ongen, it's on you again, I think.
Feels like he's trying to gather the group, right? It was that sort of motion, of course I'm interpreting all these from a human perspective, but
Absolutely, you are. So
yeah.
There's this gathering or beckoning gesture, and I've put the screenshots here. You can see it, and it's the sort of thing. If you were trying to communicate with somebody another human at a distance, this is the sort of thing you would do. Just come over here. You'll see later. He's really focused on one individual, which is a female, and he's trying to initiate sexual intercourse. And if you're experienced at watching bonobos interacting with one another, that it was quite obvious what he's trying to do. And I'll play the video again at the other end of the talk, and we'll see why, one reason why that's pretty clear. Okay, so that's the empirical. Those are just a few examples of the sorts of interactions that we observe in other great apes. and articulate what the challenge is from a cognitive point of view. So naturalistic observation and many controlled experiments in many laboratories have revealed many similarities in great ape expression interaction with human expression. So there is a flexibility in the sorts of behaviors they produce. There's a sensitivity to the audience's attentional state, and you can do particular studies where what can and can't be seen from different positions is manipulated in a controlled way. And you find that focal individuals will change what they do depending on that attentional situation. There's often repetition. If something doesn't work, you repeat it. You might try a different way of doing it, or if it's misunderstood, there's some sort of repair that seems to take place. There's actually quite a long list now. Key lab for this was Mike Tomasello's research lab when he was a director of the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology in Leipzig. But there's many, many other labs and research programs revealing these commonalities. At the same time, while there are definitely commonalities and they're richer than we previously thought maybe 20 years ago, it's not the same as what humans do. And to really spell out the point and just to put a bit more kind of context to the evolutionary picture or the comparative picture, there are 5, depending on how you classify species, there are 5 existing species of great ape. So there's a bit further from humans, orangutans and gorillas. A bit closer to humans, there's bonobos and chimpanzees. And then there's humans. And all 5 of these, if you look at their interactions, they're similar in several ways. They all communicate with gestures, as you've seen here. They all communicate with vocalizations. Only one of them has language. Only one of them has an extremely wide-ranging and rich array of what they do in communication and the sorts of things that they express, or at least that's how it seems. And I'm very interested in the question of why that is the case. So the challenge is this: how do we explain these similarities and these differences in ways that have 2 desirable criteria? First, we want to be cognitive. So we can point to the behavioral differences. That's what people have done for a long time, and that's very important work. That's the first step, describing what we see. But to explain it, we need to go under the surface. Right? We want to understand actually what's going on with the cognitive processes. And the second desirable criteria is we want gradations. We want some sort of story of evolutionary continuity. We may not have all the details, but we want to be able to see how you can connect, make evolutionary connections between related species. And in doing that, what we think we can do in trying to answer those questions, or in answering those questions, developing answers to those questions, we think we can enrich human theories, theories of meaning that are used in the philosophy of language and the study of human interaction itself. And maybe a very general point here, if there are any philosophers of language or philosophers of cognition, philosophers of mind, early in their career looking for something interesting and exciting to do, I think that great ape interaction is a very fertile area. And if I was advising a grad student with those interests, everybody's their own individual and they should choose, but this is something to consider because the philosophy of language is a very rich, but also historically it's old. It's, a lot of things have been worked out. There's a lot of tradition there, and that's a good thing in some ways, but it also means there's less scope to be truly novel and original. And I think there is really large scope in the philosophy of animal minds in general to do some novel and interesting work. Okay, so that's the challenge, and here's the structure of what I'm going to present today. First, I'm going to present an analytical framework or a theoretical apparatus for thinking about layers of manipulating others' attention. You could call it mind shaping. You could just more plainly just trying to do things to other minds. And within that framework, we're going to present a key distinction between Ladyginian and Gricean modes of interaction, which is in the title. And those distinctions are going to allow us to differentiate some different varieties of meaning, which allow us to better understand both these cross-species comparisons, but also some of the behaviors that humans do as well. And I'll make 2 important asides about development and about the nature of cognitive explanation. And then the crux of the argument. I'm first going to argue that great ape interaction is at least Ladyginian in nature. And then I'm going to argue, but we don't have reasons to believe, positive reasons to believe, that it's Gricean in nature. Hence the title, Great Ape Interaction, Ladyginian, but not Gricean. And with that, I going to very briefly just comment on how we can explain many of the tested features that we see in the great ape literature. So that's where we're going. Let me take some water. So here's the framework. I'm going to introduce to you 5 embedded subsets. So each layer is a special case of the previous layer. The first one we call Washburnian. So Margaret Floy Washburn was the first woman to receive a PhD in psychology. It's 1908 from Yale. And she was a comparative psychologist. And somewhat counter to many of the trends of the time, she was a cognitivist. So they did not have that word at the time, but in today's terms, we would call her a cognitivist. Many people, behaviorism is on the rise at this moment, but she believed there were continuities in the psyche of the human mind and the animal mind. And her most influential work is this textbook called The Animal Mind. And the idea of Washburnian interaction is that you're intentionally manipulating the attention of others. So, and the cognitive aspect is, of course, this word intentional. I'm not going to go into a big digression on the philosophy of intentions, just take it as a folk concept for now. But you're manipulating the attentions of others in some sort of intentional way. And in modern discourse, modern terms, we often talk about intentional communication or intentional interaction. That's a common term in the primate literature, and it corresponds to our layer, Washburnian. Now, where do you target that manipulation of attention? What are you trying to drive attention towards? And one type of thing you can drive attention towards is your own intentions, which may be intentions to play or to groom or to be groomed or to have sex or to do whatever it is that you want to do. You have intentions to do these things, and you may want to drive the attention of others towards your intentions. That's what we call Ladyginian. Nadia Ladyginian Kotz was born Nadia Ladygina, and she also was a comparative psychologist. And she was one of the first people to systematically think about comparisons between great apes and human infants as a useful point of comparison. In many ways, she's the first person to what becomes the lab of Mike Tomasello and Joseph Kuhl and many other influential people in Leipzig, and as I said earlier, many other labs around the world. One of the very first people to do this is Nadia Ladygina, and this is a key book, 1935, Infant, Chimpanzee and the Human Child. So that's intentionally manipulating others' attention towards your own intentions, to play, to be groomed, to have sex, or whatever. Or one of them, not just to play or to be groomed, but actually to inform. So you may manipulate others' attention towards your intention to inform them. That's a special case of Ladyginian interaction. And this is where philosopher Paul Grice comes in. I assume that not everybody is familiar with the history of philosophy of language. Those that are will know that Paul Grice is a very important, influential figure. He has a theory of meaning, which is predicated on this idea that meaning at bottom is about the expression and recognition of intentions. And you reveal your intentions to your audience, and that's what it is to mean something out in the world. Again, we could do a whole semester on Grice. We're not going to do that now. I'm just going to give you that gloss. It's a special case of Ladyginian interaction where you're driving attention towards your own specifically informative intentions, not just any old intentions, but specifically informative ones. Key line from one of Grice's papers: individual A means something by X, and behavior X is roughly equivalent to saying A intended the utterance of X to produce some effect in the audience by means of the recognition of this intention. So you drive the audience's attention towards your intention that they understand something. And that is what Grice argues gives you meaning. Okay. Another contemporary word, rough, not exactly the same. I realize there are some subtleties for those who know the literature well, but roughly a similar word is ostensive in the contemporary literature. And many human behaviors are ostensive or Gricean. So Grice in particular was focused on linguistic meaning, but many other human behaviors. Sometimes we wink or we nod, we do all sorts of things. We might have exaggerated displays of enthusiasm. We have these onomatopoeic sounds that we produce. Many things that humans do are Gricean or ostensive, not just linguistic things. And of course, linguistic things are a very important special case. So now we get 2 further layers. First, we get conventional cases. So you can have unconventional cases. You can have, you go to an alien environment where you don't know anything of the language, you don't know anything of the local culture. In order to be understood, you will need to pantomime, you will need to be ad hoc and act out whatever it is in order to provide evidence of your informative intentions. But of course, what humans massively prefer to do is to do it by convention. It's much quicker, it's much easier. Some conventions are nodding or thumbs up, many, many more conventions that humans use. And a special class of conventions are those that exist in a richly structured network. And we call them languages. So there are many, many conventions within languages, and each of them has micro functions that depend on the micro functions of other conventions, and that interconnectedness and combinatorial qualities is what makes them languages. So Lewis is a famous philosopher of conventions. Saussure is a famous linguist who emphasized the structural nature of language, and they give their names to these two layers. So now we've got this analytical frame. Each of these subsets is a special case of the subset that's higher up. And just to think about gradations and continuities, there's both biological aspects here and cultural aspects. So you can have species that are capable of Washburnian interaction but may not engage in Ladyginian. You can have species that may engage in Ladyginian interaction but not Gricean interaction. Species that do engage in Gricean interaction can, by repeated interaction, start to develop conventional ways to do Gricean interaction. And those conventional ways, by further interaction, can start to develop the interdependence and structural qualities. And so you get languages as particularly efficient and powerful ways of doing Gricean interaction. So this allows me, this framework, that's the framework. And it allows us, as I said earlier, very shortly, I'm going to talk about those cross-species comparisons, get back to the chimpanzees and the bonobos, but we can also talk about within humans and give you some, I'm going to elaborate on that point now. So Grice himself famously distinguished between natural meaning and what he called non-natural meaning, which we've renamed Gricean for obvious reasons. We think we can talk also usefully about meaning in a Washburnian sense and meaning in a Ladyginian sense. And what distinguishes them is the intention that motivates the production of a particular stimulus. So natural meaning are those cases where there is no intention behind the stimulus, right? So dark clouds mean rain, not because anybody intentionally produced a dark cloud so that I can infer that rain is coming. Dark clouds just mean rain because they're informative to me in that way. Animal footprints can mean that prey has been here recently. The color of a fruit can mean ripeness. That's mean in the natural sense of the word. Meaning in the opposite extreme, in the Gricean sense, is all language use. So you have an intention to reveal a specifically informative intention. Those are those Lewisian and Saussurean cases I talked about just now, pointing, pantomime, and so on. Meaning in a Washburnian sense mean you have an intention to act on others' mental states. So humans do this without being Ladyginian or Gricean quite commonly. We do it all the time. So if I put on a very professional looking suit to go to work, well, I'm not necessarily bringing attention to my choice of suit unless it's particularly brightly colored or whatever, right? I'm choosing something that allows me to fit in, and in that sense, I intend to act on your mental states, even if a low level and tacit way. I'm still intending for you to believe that I'm a professional individual. So my grey suit means professionalism. My expensive car can mean that I have wealth. My generous behavior can mean that I am pro-social. You can add your examples. You have an intention to act on others' mental states, but you're not bringing attention to that intention itself, unless you go over the top, of course. You can go over the top with generous behavior. You can go over the top with your choice of suits. You can go over the top with your choice of your displays of wealth and so on. That becomes something else. Sometimes we have an intention to reveal an intention. And here it's worth... Here I'll go to example. I want you to think about two people passing each other on the street. So it's a narrow street, right? So they're not sure which side they're going to, and they're walking towards each other, and they're not sure which way they're going to pass. One person might move to one side, to the left, in order to pass on that side and enable the passing. So they have an intention to pass on the left, and they also have an intention to reveal that they have that intention. So they move to the left in order that the other person sees their intention to pass on the left and not on the right. So moving to one side of a narrow street means, in a Ladyginian sense, an intention to pass on that side. Another example, in partner dance, some particular movements mean, in a Ladyginian sense, an intention that the dance partner performs some particular further or complementary movement. And then you have the Gricean sense, where we reveal a specifically informative intention. Now, I think there are gradations between the, I've drawn, quite clear lines between these. Actually, you can go further into the story of gradations and talk about gradations in between each of these categories. I'm not going to do that right now, but I think that can be done. Okay, so that's varieties of meanings in humans. Two asides to lead us into the discussion about infants and then in turn non-human primates. So first, me and Christoph, and we're certainly not alone here, we think the empirical evidence favors the conclusions that infants are Griceans from the beginning, which means from the time that they enter the social world, which is at about 9 months of age, sometimes called the socio-cognitive revolution. There's many studies supporting this conclusion. I've listed some key researchers in the corner here, but there are many more. And I'm just going to bring attention to one study, not because it's the definitive killer study, but because it highlights the key distinctions that we want to make in a quite particularly clean way. So the headline is "Infants Communicate in Order to be Understood." And what happens here is that a situation is set up in which the infant interacts with an adult and asks for a particular object, a ball. Right? And in both cases, they get the ball. They've got the ball here, they've got the ball here. But they get it in one of two different ways. They either get it because the adult understood, oh, you wanted the ball, here's the ball. Everything is fine and normal. In the happy accident condition, the adult misunderstands, oh, you want this other thing. But then in some way or another, the child gets the thing they wanted nevertheless. And this, what you can see in the video, is they're handing the ball because they're absent-minded. I think there are conditions where they nudge something by accident and the child gets the ball. So the child has asked for the ball and the child has received the ball. What's interesting is that in this happy accident condition, the child complains. They asked for the ball and they got the ball, but they still complain. And the only explanation of them complaining is that they weren't understood. So infants communicate not simply for instrumental means, as we all do, but they want their informative intention to itself be understood. That's the immediate goal. I actually want to be understood. There's much more to say about infants, just pointing to this as one example of many. Infants are Gricean from the beginning. This is part of the ordinarily developing phenotype of humans. Now, I've learned, I made these new papers are enrichments of past papers of mine where I've argued that although humans are Gricean, other species are similar in many ways, but they're also not Gricean. And the common response is, well, this whole Gricean framework is too much. You're talking about intentions to affect other intentions, to reveal specifically informative intentions. You write it down analytically as a scientist or a philosopher, and it's hard to think about. It seems cognitively complex. That's completely true. We don't think that is any particular barrier, though, to theorizing in this way. And to make that point, here's an analogy. So many hundreds of years ago, there was a question about depth perception. The vision science is beginning as a proper science. And the key question is, well, how do we see in depth? Because we only have one point of view, right? I just have my head, but yet I perceive depth. And Descartes comes up with the answer, you don't only have one point of view, you have two. And those 2 points of view allow triangulation, right? Descartes' peers, many of Descartes' peers, their reaction was, René, we love you, you're a genius, but this is crazy talk. Right? People are not doing trigonometry in their head when they look out there in the world. This is George Berkeley, famous Irish philosopher and contemporary of Descartes. But those lines of angles by which whereof some men pretend to explain the perception of distance are themselves not at all perceived, nor are they in truth ever thought of by those unskillful in optics, i.e. ordinary people. In vain shall any man tell me that I perceive certain lines and angles which introduce into my mind the various ideas of distance. So, it's very clever. I understand how that could work, Descartes, but that's not the deal. The mistake here is to mistake phenomenological simplicity for scientific and analytical simplicity. things such as vision and communication are plainly phenomenologically simple. They almost happen to us, rather than that's how it seems, rather than doing them. That doesn't mean that our scientific analyses need to be extremely simple too. Vision science is an enormous field. The textbooks, this high. There's enormous amounts of complexity in describing just how depth perception works, and we don't see a problem with attributing layers of meta representations to explaining communication. Okay, so there are two asides. I want to move on now, but get back to the great apes, right? So I've set up a framework, I've set up this distinction between Ladyginian and Gricean, elaborated how I see it's going on in humans and why this is justified. I want to get back to the great apes. There's a very influential research agenda studying great ape interaction. It's based at St Andrews University. Very empirically productive, really interesting data. And a summary paper from 2017, this is where they see the situation. Meaning is a loaded term when discussing animal communication. Normally, in order to avoid unwarranted imputation of goals to signalers, biologists describe signals just by their function, the effects they produce on audiences. But since the intentionality of great ape gesture has been robustly established, it is appropriate to ask what signalers mean. What effects do they want to produce? So they're stepping into the turf of what we mean. Well, what exactly do we mean by meaning? This I've highlighted these words in red here. Since the intentionality of ape gesture has been robustly established, they're referring there to the many studies that have argued that great ape gestures are produced intentionally, and in our terms that means they're Washburnian. We agree with that conclusion. We think that great apes are manipulating others' attention. So that does absolutely warrant the question, well, what do they mean in a Washburnian sense? We actually think the data that come from this research program warrant an even stronger conclusion, which is that they're Ladyginian. And the reason we think that is that the method that's generally used actually targets Ladyginian modes of interaction. So the method they're using with this motive, what do they want to produce? They look at not the producer, but at the audience. And the question they ask is, what reactions from the audience cause the gesturer to cease gesturing? So there's many things, target audiences might do in response to a gesture. And great apes are more than able and willing to just keep going and keep trying. What actually stops them? And by that, you can work out what is the intent behind the production of the gesture. That seems to us to be a method targeting not simply Washburnian interaction, but Ladyginian interaction, because it's effectively asking, let me go back, it's effectively asking what intentions did the gesturer reveal such that they've now been satisfied. The audience has now satisfied them by whatever it is that they've done. That's a Ladyginian question. And with this method, this is one summary paper, there are several out there. Many gestures have been documented and described. There's variation between species, between groups, but also a lot of similarity too. It's quite interesting to go into the detail. I'm just going to give you a couple of examples. So this is called a mouth stroke. One individual is eating, and another one doesn't grab the food, but they might move their hand over the mouth of the individual who's eating. Right? And what stops that happening? What behavior causes that gesture to cease? And that's actually, allowing the food to be taken. Right? And so the intention that's being revealed is, I want to take some of that food. And then sometimes that intention is satisfied by allowing the food to be taken. Big loud scratch is loud, exaggerated scratching movement on the signaler's own body. Again, occurs quite often. And the question is, what behaviors from another individual cause this to stop? And the answer is grooming. You actually initiating grooming. That causes this behavior to stop happening. And so this big loud scratch means initiate grooming. We think it means that in a Ladyginian sense, because what's being intentionally revealed is an intention to be groomed. Here, I'm directing your attention to my intention to be groomed. Now, The other individual may or may not satisfy that intention. That's up to them, but that's what they're driving attention towards. Yeah, so there's the argument. This approach effectively targets Ladyginian behavior because it asks, what intentions did the gesture reveal which have now been satisfied by the audience? That's absolutely a Ladyginian question. And with that approach, there's a very large array now of distinct gestures have been identified. Exactly how many depends on, how some detailed choices of analysis and where you say that's the same gesture, that's a different one. There's a few choices to be made. There's certainly scores of different gestures, many of which are similar across species, but not all of them. Again, many similar across different groups within one species, but not all of them. If you Google the Great Ape Dictionary, you'll find a long list. This list goes from arm wave to bite, and it's an alphabetical order. So you can see there's going to be a much longer list going through the whole alphabet. Okay. And we think the empirical successes of this research program in documenting the sorts of gestures that all great ape, non-human great ape species are using, that these successes warrant the conclusion that great ape interaction is at least Ladyginian in character. They are intentionally revealing intentions to be groomed, intentions to have sex, intentions to play. Okay. So great ape interaction is not Gricean. There we go. First thing to say, in asking this question is it's hard because the distinction between Ladyginian and Gricean is not a behavioral distinction. Our whole goal is to be cognitive about this, right? It's not that you can see on the surface that that's Ladyginian and that's Gricean. There's a cognitive distinction. It's about the intentions that motivate a certain behavior. That's what the distinction is. And so you can't just simply observe it on the surface. Both of them entail satisfying an informative intention. The question is, how is that intention satisfied? Is it because you reveal the informative intention itself, or is it that's Gricean, or is it some other way? And both of them are, they're flexible and they're context sensitive. Nevertheless, there are some proxy indicators. So think about something like displaced reference. So displaced reference is referring to things that are remote in time and space. So I can refer right now to my cardigan, and I can do that by putting it in front of my screen or pointing to it, right? But if my cardigan is somewhere else, right? How do I refer to it while being here and while being now in this moment in time? I refer to it with words like cardigan, but that's displaced reference, referring to things that are remote in time and space. Now, if you're Gricean, and in particular if you're Gricean enriched with conventions, you can do that by using the words or using some other conventions or some other way. I could act out wearing a cardigan, right? If I didn't have the conventions, I can still be remote in time and space as a Gricean because all I have to reveal is my informative intention that you believe that there's a cardigan in the next room or whatever. Right? If I'm Ladyginian, though, all I can reveal is my intentions, particularly my informative intentions, but other types of intentions. It's very hard to see how you could do displaced reference at all if you're Ladyginian but not Gricean, right? And it turns out that in the great ape data, there is no really compelling evidence of displaced reference. There may be some particular exceptional cases, but the pattern is that what great apes interact about are things that are here and now. They don't really seem to do displaced reference. They do here and now. Similar story for a distinction between dyadic and triadic interaction. So dyadic is me and you. It's two individuals, right? Triadic is two individuals interacting about a third thing. It might be another individual or it might be some other object, right? And again, you can see how that is straightforwardly done as a Gricean. All humans are Gricean, so we do it just without even thinking. It's barely noticeable. And that's, again, possible if you can reveal your informative intentions. That's what we do. If you can't reveal informative intentions, but you can simply reveal intentions, behavioral intentions, then triadic behavior is going to be very difficult. How are we going to interact about something else other than us, right? And again, you look at the great ape data, there are some interesting exceptions to discuss, but the overall trend is very clear. Their interactions are dyadic and very, very rarely triadic. I think for reasons of time, yeah, I'm going to skip the third one. There's a longer list in the paper. I'm going to skip that for now for reasons of time. Yeah, that's a rather long list in the paper. And that leads us to the conclusion that, we're always open-minded, but we don't see positive evidence of Griceanism in great apes beyond humans. There are some very interesting cases among captive individuals, and we can discuss that in the Q&A if anybody wishes to. Okay, we think what we're saying, the interesting thing, when we hit on these ideas, we develop them in detail, we realize that what we're saying is not so far different from what some others have said, and these others are in some sense critical of some of our other arguments. The difference is that, and what we'd like to think is quite novel here, is this clear distinction between Gricean and Ladyginian. I've argued it, in the past, great apes are not Griceans. And other people have argued, well, are you sure? And there's these arguments and these are, and I think they're very good challenges. And we think, this distinction between Ladyginian and Gricean is a way to address those very useful questions. Okay, so I'm going to go back now to these videos. We started here, and this time I'm going to give you a bit of commentary about what I want you to see. So this is a mother and an infant. The mother wants the infant to travel, and what the mother's going to do is reveal to the infant her intention that the infant climbs on her back. And she's going to do that by, gentle nudges, not enough power in the nudge to actually put the infant on her back, but there is enough to reveal, this is what I intend, my intention is you climb on my back, and you have the evidence to do it. Therefore, and she keeps going, and she stops doing that precisely when the infant actually climbs on her back. Okay, here we go. So she turns her back, that's the first thing. And the infant seems to climb on, but doesn't really. Mother waits a little bit. Okay, and there's a hand movement. Not enough to force the infant, but enough to reveal her intention. And again, here it comes. Again, a little movement up with the hand. And that's why the video person starts laughing. Because she can see what the mother wants. She's revealed her intentions, but the infant is not yet satisfied. This time oh no, it failed again. Now it works. Where they go. Back to the one crossing the stream. What you're going to see here, well, I'll talk over it this time. This pull on the tree is revealing an intention. I want you to come across this stream, and you can get across using this branch. It's strong enough. You can get across here. It doesn't work. Tries again. Repetition. I intend for you to come across. Still not working. And so now the mother comes across. Reaches out, and there we go. And I'm now going to play again just about 5 seconds of this video. I want you to watch the mother on the left here. She's going to pull the twig. The infant's not going to react. And then I want you to look at the mother's left hand. She's going to put her left hand behind her back. And that is a gesture that means, in a Ladyginian sense, I want you to come over here and climb on my back. And you'll see it's on the back of the mother. Here we go. Just there. Let's climb on my back. The infant ignores her, and so she has to go back across the stream. Okay, I haven't got the third one. I seems to have cut it out. What happens in that video is that alongside that big beckoning gesture that you rightly pointed to earlier, Ongun, the male actually displays his erect penis just before he does it. He does a big display like this, and then he does the beckoning gesture. He's revealing an intention to have sex. Okay, so we have these attested features. These are well established in the empirical literature. We accept the findings of the empirical literature that there are all these trends in the natural interactions of non-human great ape species. We think we can explain all of them in terms of the Ladyginian Gricean distinction. I won't go into all the details now, anyways, it's a whole talk for reasons of time. But I've touched on a few. Well, I plan to touch on three. I've touched on the first two of these. That's a summary of what I said. There are many others, and I'll be very happy to take questions about them in the Q&A or in emails afterwards. If anybody quickly wants to see one that they care about, there's the summary. It's all in the paper. Okay, so summary and conclusions. Three-way distinction, which we think is really useful, not just for understanding contrast between humans and other great apes, but also within human behavior. So we have Washburnian behavior, which is the intentional manipulation of attention. One special case of that is bringing attention towards your own intentions. That we call Ladyginian. And a further special case of that is bringing attention towards your own specifically informative intentions. And that's what we call Gricean. That gives us, as I said, many varieties of meaning and expression applicable across and between species. Across and between? That should be across and within, but anyway. Okay. And we think this Ladyginian Gricean distinction in particular is very important for understanding non-human great apes, both in their own rights, right? They're interesting to study and important to study as great ape species. But it's also useful, this distinction, in understanding what is particular about humans. And I think why we are the only species that have language. So the big headline takeaway, the evolution of human communication and hence language really lies, its core source is in the evolution of different means of attention manipulation and more generally, social cognition. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm very much looking forward to your questions.
Thank you, Thom. It was a great talk. We'll give a short 5-minute break. So let's come back at 52 past, and then we can take it from there.
Sure. I stopped the share, but I can put it back, of course.
I mean, I think it's okay for now, but if some people want to refer back to this. Okay, so the way we do this is that you basically digitally raise your hand from the reaction section, and then I call on your name, and then you can ask your question. Okay, everybody's quite shy today.
So it seems.
I mean, if no one's willing to go, I will ask a question. So you talked about sort of this sensitivity to the audience's attentional states, right? So just a basic but kind of a general question. How should we think of that sensitivity? Is it sort of has to do with mental attributions, or how the individual interprets the other's actions of that sort of what sort of sensitivity would that be, if that question makes sense?
Only half. I've got some thoughts. I'll share them, and then you can tell me if I've answered your question.
Okay.
Well, maybe I have one thought, which is that I'm a deflationist when it comes to what's commonly called mind reading or mentalizing.
Right.
So a lot of people will use those terms, treat that phenomenon as something somehow cognitively sophisticated.
Yeah.
And there are certainly versions of it, re-articulating it and analyzing your own mental state and re-articulating it in conversation. There's a whole set of tasks there. But we're of the view that, in ordinary interaction, humans going about the world, there is low-level mental representation of others' intentions and others' mental states all the time. I don't really think you can pass by someone or have a basic interaction in the shop without doing that.
Okay.
I suspect that doesn't fully answer your question, but that's where I'm coming from. I don't know if you want to elaborate more.
I mean, I have a related linked question with regards to Ladyginian questions, but I want other people to speak up as well. So I'm going to leave that for now. Yes, Hubert, you can go ahead.
Yes, thank you, and thank for this very interesting presentation. I had a question like concerning the need to postulate the second order intentions in the different interpretations. So I have like some sort of general like skepticism in in these sort of high order intentions. Um, but so for example, like if you take the case where with the infant and the mother, like it seems to me like maybe like it's um possible also to just think of that the mother has a first order intention to make the infant jump up on her back, at least at like first instance, and then maybe like since the infant doesn't respond accordingly, maybe like she like, okay, I need to make the infant jump up on my back in another way. Maybe the mother then formulates like some sort of second order intention like to communicate this. But yes, I just wanted to like hear like your thoughts on if it's possible to interpret it in another way as well.
Yeah, it's a good question. So I have two things to say in reply, one narrow and one broader.
No.
The narrow thing to say, just on the specific example you're going to, if it were the case that the mother, in the first instance, simply intends the infant to be on her back, rather than the contrast, they intend to reveal that they want the intention that the infant to climb back. If it's simply the first of those, then they should physically push the infant onto their back. If the intention is simply, I want you on my back, then there's no reason why they shouldn't actually do it themselves. And that's the best way to satisfy that intention. What they actually do is something which is the best way to satisfy a different thing, which is to reveal my intention that you climb on my back. And so that's, the behavior itself, it's inference to the best explanation is that they don't have an intention simply to get the kid on the back, the infant on the back, because then they would be more forceful. The broader reply is, we're accepting I suppose what I think is a consensus conclusion within the literature at large. So you can always, in any particular study, you can always be deflationary in the way you're pointing to, and that's a good, it's good to be skeptical in those ways. But there is by now, there are hundreds of studies that have manipulated all sorts of different aspects of this and about attention and about, who can see what, different types of relationships between different individuals, different types of motivation and so on. And you can be deflationary about each individual study, but then your explanation of the thing as a whole is a whole list of individual associations and biases and so on. And we think it, and again, inference to the best explanation, it's more parsimonious to say they are engaging in these sorts of particular types of mental state attribution and recognition and intention that we're positing. We are just trying to make sense of the data.
Okay. Yeah. I see your point, and I definitely agree on this like latter, the broader like reply. But when it comes to the more narrow, like if you allow me to like push this point a bit more, like if you take this, it seems to be a case of some sort of like ritualization that maybe not exactly, but sort of similar at least. But or maybe I could like ask you, like, do you think that like onto like ritualization that like jump on my back, is that also like, does that also presuppose this second order intention or?
We think so, yes. There's a passage in the paper about ontogenetic ritualization,
Okay.
which is exactly about how, rather than having to force, you just ritualize the revealing of the intention and it becomes this thing here.
Yeah. Okay.
The fact that it's ritualized doesn't change the fact that you're revealing an intention. It changes the means by which you reveal the intention. It doesn't change that's what you're doing.
Okay. Yeah. No, I see your point. Thanks.
It's good questions.
Thank you, Hubert, for the questions. I have a related question to Hubert's point. So what is the, I mean, do we have any data on why the mother just does not restrict herself to first order intentions? I mean, is there like, what the question I'm asking is, why is she trying to, turn on the intention in the infant to, jump on her back rather than just putting her on her back, right?
Yeah, I don't have a detailed answer. I'd point to the other video where the mother comes across the stream. She doesn't quite put the infant on her back, but she comes a lot closer to like, here's my arm, get on it. I assume that if you're too directly forceful with your infant too often, that has all sorts of other consequences. That's undesirable in other ways. I don't know enough about the details of especially mother-infant relationships in chimpanzees or bonobos to answer that in detail. But I assume the answer is along those lines.
Okay.
I mean, in some ways, I'd put the question the other way. Why wouldn't you do it in the more, socially revealing your intentions, a socially fluid way? Why not? If you can, why not?
Yeah. Yeah, Hubert, you can go
ahead. Thank you. Yes, so I have another question. This is really not about the content, but more like the terminology. So I was thinking when it comes to like the different ways to describe the intentions. So like the when you call it the informative intention, it seems really like inspired by Sperber and Wilson and the relevance theory, right? Yeah. If I remember Grice correctly, like in his later papers, he includes more responses than just like the belief formation. So he includes that sort of actions that you could intend to induce or to make the adversary like act in a certain way, and not just to create a certain belief. And then on top of that, you had this second order intention to reveal the first order intention. And I don't really know like how to place that view of intentions like in your framework. So wouldn't count as an informative intention then, right? Or
I would need it depends on I need more details of the example you have in mind to...
Yeah, okay. So let's say yes, that I just intend to produce like some sort of action in that. So if I say, please get me a coffee, or just get me a coffee, like straight up imperative, the intention is not to like make you believe something. It's just like an intention to get coffee.
We think we don't agree with that.
Okay.
We think all human communication is revealing is revealing informative intentions.
Okay. So then it is an intention to inform you of my like desire to get coffee or something like this.
Yeah. Okay. The means by which we do it, there is many and many and varied ways of satisfying your informative intentions. And after the event, you can look at those different means and you can classify them. You can say they're imperatives, they're questions, they're whatever. You can, and it's useful and interesting to do that. But revealing and satisfying informative intentions is the umbrella concept for what humans do as a matter of course.
Okay. And then I follow up with
I think that's pretty mainstream relevance theory.
Yeah. But then you understand informative intention as like Sperber and Wilson, or
absolutely, yes. We're taking that terminology from there. I think Grice doesn't use informative intention. It's reformulated by Schiffer and then Sperber and Wilson.
Yeah, no, I see.
They introduced that terminology, and we think that's the right way to go.
Yeah, okay, I see. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, I have another question. No one seems to be asking most. So this is a question about the sorts of concepts that go into our theorizing. So when we were talking about how the apes, disclose their intention to be groomed, right? With sort of, with sort of like a very crude, non-symbolic way of just scratching themselves, right?
Yes.
So I was wondering, so when we're talking about attention manipulation, like intentionally speaking, so what sort of sense of intention factors into that? So because in the example where the ape scratches itself, right, it feels like there's also the possibility that we can apply sort of like Wittgensteinian intention in action sort of disclosing of intentions, right? So is there a possibility that we understand intentions in our theory as sort of like this, at least in some cases, right, where it's an intention in action, but not a sort of prior mental entity that precedes the action itself?
I was going to say yes, and then I didn't understand the final distinction you made just at the end of the question. So I think the answer is yes. What I will point to is we were actually, I think, if I understand what you're pointing at, we were pressed a little on this in the review process, and we ended up with quite a long footnote to try and address it, where we went to the philosophy of action. So we grounded our notion of an intention in mainstream philosophy of action. It's in the paper. I cannot recite word for word, but we have worked through that, and it's in the paper. But if what you're asking is this grounded in mainstream philosophy of action, the answer is yes.
Okay, so you are operating with sort of like a Wittgensteinian / Anscombian, or no?
Perhaps. Philosophy of action is not my area.
Okay.
So
okay.
I don't know actually. Christoph wouldn't.
Yeah. Okay. I'll take a look at the paper.
Yeah, it's footnote. Footnote. Oh, it's a star. It's not even a number. It's a star.
Okay. Any other? Yeah, Hubert, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you again. If no one else wants to, I'm gonna continue. Yeah, a bit annoying.
No, it's good. Engagement is great.
Yeah, great. So I don't know like if this question makes sense, but so I was wondering if we take your account of intentionality in communication, like not the Gricean one, couldn't it be that the first order intention that you reveal, maybe it's not always like an intention, but just some mental state in general? So it could be some desire, maybe. Yeah, like other mental states than intentions, but then you still have the second order intention. Yeah. Do you have any thoughts about
that? I think we'd include desire as a
okay.
As intention is an umbrella term.
Okay. Yeah, I see. Okay. Okay. Reasonable. Yep.
All the verbs want, I was going to say desire, but all of them fall within intention.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. Belief. Desires, beliefs, wants, knowledge. All mental states.
Okay. I see.
Yeah.
Just a follow up on the answer you gave to Hubert's question. Is the theory sensitive to this? Because I'm saying this. I'm asking this because like you were sort of saying that we take beliefs and desires and knowledge states as sort of all revealing a sort of intention. So is there a distinction? I mean, in your view, or I mean, there is a distinction, of course, but is the theory sensitive to that distinction? To sort of beliefs are sort of that states that have a different direction of fit, right? Than desire states. Right. So is that a distinction that the theory is sensitive to, or is it just
Depends what you mean by sensitive to. So you can absolutely accommodate that distinction within what we're saying if you so wish. You know, we're not making any claim either way about the relationships between beliefs and desires. We're saying those are mental states. We're saying they can be revealed by certain types of cognitive interactions in the world. That's all we're saying. How you classify the different types of mental states that people reveal, that's interesting work.
okay.
Fine. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I guess not. Thom, thank you very much for this great talk and
my pleasure.
For the great Q&A session. I'll make sure to read the paper and look at the footnote.
Sure. Thank you for the very good questions, both of you. They're informed and engaged, and that's great.
Yeah, thank you a lot for the talk. And we'll hopefully see you all in our next cognitive webinar. Thank you.